Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sandhu. I was just cleaning out some of the files on my computer, so I'm cleaning out the drives, and was going through some old videos, etc., that I've downloaded. And man, does it ever build up? I literally have thousands. Don't have enough time left in this life to watch them all. That much information, and that's the beauty of life. People think that life is boring. How life can be boring is something which is totally beyond me, because there is every day. If there was 2,400 hours in a day, there wouldn't be enough to learn even a fraction of the information that applies even to this life, never mind that which is to come. Anyhow, this video is titled Rome, London, New York, Tri-City Triad. Okay. Essentially the gist of the video, and then I found another one called the Three Evil City-States That Rule the World. So these videos are not my videos. I'm just re-uploading them essentially with the information that has been compiled and narrated by the producers of these videos. The original video, this Rome, London, New York, Tri-City Triad, is actually quite a long one. It's a lengthy one. It's about 3 hours long, but I don't see it on YouTube anymore. So this must have been many years ago that I actually downloaded it. Now, I cannot vouch that all the information in here is 100% correct. For one thing, because we are talking about secret societies and the ruling elite, so to speak, we don't have access into the workings of these organizations, or we only get glimpses of it. Okay, so we have to put the pieces together. However, there is enough information out there to support the validity of the information that is being presented here. In principle, I would say that it is correct that Babylon in Bible, Babylon the Great, the city that is said to rule over the kings of the world, is actually three cities, and there are three city-states that are within the geographical areas of certain countries. Like the Vatican, for example, is in the geographical area of Italy and within the city of Rome itself, but it is not the city of Rome, nor is the city of Rome or the country of Italy have any jurisdiction over it. It is a completely independent nation within a nation and a city. Same thing applies to the city of London. This actually, the Vatican people know about, many people do, but the city of London is called the city. It's just called the city. This is not information that is commonly known except among the upper classes, that the city of London, again, is a city-state which is basically a sovereign nation within the United Kingdom and within the city of Greater London. And this city, like the Vatican, you could say, is the spiritual head of the beast. Then the city of London is the financial, you could call it the soul of the beast, okay? And then, of course, there's a third city which is called the Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. We will talk a little bit about Columbia later as to why that name was chosen, the District of Columbia. Columbia, of course, is a Roman goddess, and it might behoove you to do some research as to what this is a goddess of and why she is so revered by these elites. Even the Statue of Liberty is the Statue of Columbia. All right, so these videos, they will give you some insights. You can continue to do your own research and understand that, as we are taught in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 23, that we as people, we as human beings, we as mankind are three components. We have a spirit, a soul, and a body. That's what makes a man. Therefore, this Trinity in the dark world, in the what's called Babylon in the Bible, also has three parts to it. The Vatican being the spirit, the spiritual head, London being the soul, the financial head, because the love of money, we are told, is the root of all evil. And the city of London, along with, in conjunction with the city of New York. And again, look at the name New York. York, of course, is in England, and New York is referring back to York in England. So it is again a branch of the city of London. New York does not run the world. London runs New York, and London and New York and Washington D.C. in turn are run by the Vatican. So the Babylon Beast system is a compilation of different cities, prominent among them being Vatican City, the City of London, and Washington D.C. And it includes the city of New York and also, I believe, in the Zurich, Switzerland. Of course, there'll be some lesser powers, but still prominent parts of this beast, which has 10 heads, and that would include places like in France, again, maybe Paris, Frankfurt in Germany, and such that have great deal of financial power. And like the saying goes, he who has the gold makes the rules. So it is the money powers. This is where they rest. They do not rest in China. They do not rest in India or Russia. This is Europe all through and through. And the United States of America is still controlled by the Europeans through Washington, D.C., which in of itself is independent of the nation of the United States. So I wanted to do a little, as I was doing this video, I thought I'd do a little research on the origins of the name of Columbia. Like, when we have the District of Columbia, which is the formal name for Washington. Where did this name come from? And if you go to Wikipedia, it says Columbia is a historical and poetic name used for the United States of America, and also one of the names of his female personification. Now, here you can see here, personified Columbia in American flag. There you go. So this is what this goddess is, the one that is the formal name of America. It is not just a personification. It was actually the name of America was Columbia, and this was generally known. This is how people referred to it in the 18th, 19th century. For example, you can see here, beautiful goddess of liberty. Yeah, Columbia, Star-Spangled Banner, etc. So you can see this an old picture, of this man and woman dressed in this. She is dressed as Columbia, and they're holding the flag. And this was very commonly seen all over, even on the money. Okay, look at this here. This is the money. Whose picture do they put on money? Is it not of the monarch or the sovereign that runs the nation? So is this really like of the people, by the people, for the people? No, there is something more that went on here, and here it is, this Columbia on the picture of a banknote from the United States. Okay, so Columbia, what is Columbia then? Where did this name come from? They tell us that it's a name based on Christopher Columbus. First of all, if it was Christopher Columbus being a man, why didn't they have like a male personification? Why would they change it to a female? And the reason basically is there's always occult and hidden reasons for it. And this reason you can find that Columbia, from the very beginning of the United States, from the very beginning of its birth, since it started becoming a nation and the colonies, it was under the control of the occult European elites, and they have planned and created it for their own purposes. Okay, and moreover, this control, which may have been splintered in the beginning, going back to the 16th, 17th centuries or so, but it was firmly under the control of the Vatican, as we shall see, by the time after the Revolutionary War and after the nation had come into its present form as we know it as the United States of America. So here we go. This is the story of, let's read about the District of Columbia. It tells us why is Washington called the District of Columbia. Washington D.C. formerly, that means that this, the real name of this is the District of Columbia. It is not Washington, it is the District of Columbia. That is the capital of the United States of America. Washington, D.C., formerly the District of Columbia and commonly referred to as Washington. The district, or simply D.C., is the capital of the United States. The signing of the Residence Act on July 16, 1790 approved the creation of a capital district located along the Potomac River on the country's east coast. The U.S. Constitution provided for a federal district under the exclusive jurisdiction of the Congress, and the district is therefore not a part of any state. So, if the country is the United States of America, okay, it's a union of different states, of independent states, then this D.C., the District of Columbia, is not a part of any state, then it literally is not a part of the United States of America. Just like the Vatican is not a part of Italy, or the city of London is not a part of England, they are independent sovereign states, so is DC, and this is how it was set up right from the beginning. Now, to trace that this was, by the time we get to this 18th century, the end of the 18th century, after the Revolutionary War, that this was firmly under the control of the Vatican is apparent from this information. The states of Maryland and Virginia each donated land to form the federal district. So this was situated where this capital was determined to be placed. You would think that, it would go to New York or something, being the financial capital of the country. No, they chose the land which was donated by Maryland. Now the name Maryland, how apparent can it be that it is very much a Catholic Vatican name? And then Virginia. Virginia is allegedly named after the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I of England, but it is just as likely that it is named after the Virgin Mary. So that's where the land came from. And then it included the pre-existing settlements of Georgetown and Alexandria. Georgetown, of course, named after George Washington, and George Washington, as people know, or at least some people should know, that he was a very high Mason. The Masonic Order, which controlled America, is a branch of the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church. And the Jesuits, of course, themselves are the modern-day reincarnation of the Knights Templar, the Knights Templar being the originators and the controllers of modern-day banking. And this is where the power of the City of London comes in from, that this is where, due to circumstances that arose back in I think the 13th century, where the Knights Templars were driven out of Europe. They ended up to continental Europe from France and other parts, that they ended up in England, and they set up shop there. And that's why London rose to be a banking powerhouse, the most powerful in the world to this day, with the subsidiary being New York, which controls essentially the finances of the entire world. Okay, so this is how you can trace that these already were under the control of the Vatican, and its architecture, its foundation, when it was designed, it was pre-planned, pre-designed with the square and a compass. This was the design of it, with the square. Georgetown. This shows you Alexandria here, and this is where they decided to place it. It was the architect was a Frenchman hired by George Washington, and he was a very high Mason himself. And this city, as you know, like when you hear about it, the Washington D.C. is laid out according to some occult Masonic geometry. When I first heard that about 20 years ago, I didn't really understand it, but now I certainly do believe that to be the case. So this lends credence to the information that follows in the videos, that these three city-states the Vatican City, the City of London, and the District of Columbia, they are Babylon. They are the three cities that control the kings of the earth, as we are told in the Bible. And the whole world bows down and worships them. Now, going on to here, Colombia, okay? This year will also enlighten you as to how much occult influences are present everywhere, especially in the USA. Okay, this is an article on Colombia in North America. It just gives you the names, first of all the cities and towns that are District of Columbia: Columbia, Alabama, Columbia, Arizona, Columbia, California, Columbia, San Diego, Columbia, Connecticut, and goes on and on and on. Then it talks about music and entertainment. You have Columbia Amusement Company, Columbia Records, Columbia Symphony Orchestra, and of course CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System, and goes on and on. Companies like, aircraft companies, Columbia Data Products, Columbia Forest Products, Columbia Games, Columbia Power Corporation, Columbia Sportswear, okay, music, Columbia songs. So these are names of some songs. Schools: Columbia University, Columbia International University, Columbia College, Columbia Bible College. Isn't that nice? Columbia Bible College, Columbia Middle School. School districts: Columbia Elementary School districts, public schools, naval vessels, America's Cup yachts, other ships, aircraft and spacecraft, Space Shuttle Columbia, the one that exploded and killed the astronauts. Columbia in Star Trek, it was a starship in the Star Trek TV series, and it goes on and on and on and on. So this permeation of this name of Columbia, who is the goddess, whose statue, of course, the Statue of Liberty, the so-called, stands in overlooking New York. So how much more information can people give that this is not something that the genesis of the United States, its origins, they do not lie in the Bible, as we are told that it was born as a Christian nation? No, certainly not, at least not among the high elites. There were a lot of Christian people that came to this country, no doubt, but the people at the top who actually have planned and controlled it from its very early days, they are anything but Christians. Most female virgin goddess symbolism comes from the constellation Virgo. The virgin Virgo was impregnated by God on the spring equinox as the sun passed into Virgo on March 21st. 9 months later, the Son of God is born on the winter solstice. So these are the occult, mythological stories that go along with these constellations and stars and heavenly bodies. God's Sun is born, or rather reborn, every year after the sun stops on the Tropic of Capricorn for 2 days, and the third day rises from death and is reincarnated into the world. It then proceeds to come back towards the northern hemisphere as the light of the world. Okay. Again, this is of course a mockery of Jesus Christ, because everything that is the truth has its counterpart in a lie, and these are the lies that the elites of the world are very well versed in, and they follow even to the point of death and also of killing as many as are necessary that would not follow their pernicious ways. The New World Virgin Goddess Columbia was just a manifestation of the ancient consort and virgin mother of God, allegedly, depicted in Christianity as the Virgin Mary. Okay, so again, told you District of Columbia, you could say, is the district of the Virgin Mary, completely and totally under the control of the Vatican and of the Jesuit order, which control the Masons that control this district. Depicted in Christianity as the Virgin Mary, Columbia was created out of Virginia and Maryland. To the Masons, the square is the female aspect. Washington's original plan for D.C. was a large square with the future Washington Monument, the male symbol, compass at the center. In Egypt, the Trinity consists of Isis, Osiris, and Horus the sun. Isis can be seen as the ultimate female deity. And Isis, of course, is the queen of heaven, about which we have found written in the book of the prophet Jeremiah, and God's condemnation of the worship of this idolatrous worship that was going on even back in the days of the Israelites some 2,500 years ago or more. Besides these names, the same aspects of any goddess can be found in Aphrodite, Ishtar, Black Madonna, Mary, Maya, Goddess Athena, Goddess Astarte, Anunit Astarte, and Atar Samain. She was the light giver at this season of year and was called Kut. As the mighty earth goddess, her name was Usurth. Anyways, it goes on, and basically this is where we learn. I'll put a link to this website in the description. That yes, this is who Columbia is. Columbia is Isis, Egyptian, and the Egyptian symbology, including the obelisk, so-called Washington Monument, which is nothing more than a male phallic symbol, is found in Washington, D.C., in the City of London, in the Vatican, and harkens back to the occult Egyptian sun god, S-U-N, not the son of God, S-O-N of God. No, sun god. Helios worship, which has, of course, given us the heliocentric model of the universe and other lies. All right. So this is where the name Columbia comes from. And now I'm going to, play these other two video clips, which talk about these three cities that rule the world, and combined they form what is called Babylon the Great in the Bible.
Three evil city-states that rules the world. Welcome to Tricky Mickey. Please support the channel by subscribing. Share the word. Tricky Mickey is here. Share and like and leave a comment at the bottom. Thank you. In this episode of Tricky Mickey, we're going to explore the three unholy trinity that rules the world. What are the three city-states that control finances, religion, and the military? Why should you be concerned? How does it affect you? First of all, the trinity of a globalist stranglehold is London, the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. You will notice in this picture, they all have the obelisk. The obelisk is Egyptian symbol for the phallics, for the male masculine symbol. Therefore, this is part of the ancient Egyptian mystery religion. It's pagan, it's anti-Christian, and it's godless. The city of London, not part of England. The Vatican is not part of Italy. And Washington, D.C. is not part of the United States of America. Why? Because they are self-incorporated city-states. They incorporated. They went and established by rule of international law. They created a tiny little territory into their own city-state for their own power aggrandizement. As you can see in this picture, controls religion, controls the mind through the Jesuits. More on the Jesuits later. Also, you have the Freemasons controlling many things in the United States of America. Also, you have the Illuminati. If you look at the Pentagon, it is purely Masonic. Here we have more detail on the empire of the city. This is the New World Order that you have to be wary of. Washington, D.C. is for the military. The Queen represents the city of London. She's into the Illuminati. She's the head of the Illuminati, the Committee of 300. Then you also have the Vatican, who is the false prophet prophesied in the Christian Bible. First, the financial capital of the entire world. The Corporation of London, also known as the City of London, or also known as Secret London. This was originally created in the times of the ancient Romans, who conquered England and established Londinium. Today we have the City of London, which is a corporation, and it's the financial capital of the entire world. Undisputed. You name it, anybody who is a corporation and big and powerful is there. Most people don't have the courage to share this. The City of London Corporation. This small little country that almost no one knows has or heard of has funded all sides of World War I, World War II, and is already initiating World War III because war is good business. The City of London is an international association and has its own court, crown temple, religious site, and other interior organization, and is ruled by the Rothschilds that controls $500 trillion worth of the world's money. This is the Illuminati in reality, hiding in plain sight. The more you know about the New World Order, the more you can do something to protect yourself and your family. Here we have the City of London at nighttime. Now the City of London is not to be confused with the rest of London that grew around it. This City of London, as I stated, is ancient Roman created and has always been independent for literally thousands of years. Behold, the guardian of all ill-gotten treasure, where the UK ends and where the world's largest corporation jurisdictional holding company begins. Self-policed, self-regulated, completely immune and detached from the profane world. All bow and worship the dragon, which is the symbol of Satan. Here we have another picture of the City of London, which is near the Thames. And as you can see, all corporations have to be incorporated there. If you're anything, anybody, no matter whether you're from the United States, if you're a corporation, you will have one of your buildings there. Here we have a lot of secret society and caste and other organizations that work within the City of London. Academy would like to thank the following livery companies and ward clubs for their support. Their secret society that aid and abet the perpetuation of the City of London. Most people don't have the courage to share this. 666. This small little country that almost no one has heard of is responsible for a lot of the evil in the world by the manipulation of economics. And the Rothschilds are behind this. This is a very evil family that has for hundreds of years ruled behind the scenes, financing wars, and it's very easy for them to own and control nations all over the world. Second, the capital of the entire New World religion. Again, Vatican in Rome is a state. Vatican City is a city-state. It is answerable to itself, and the head of Vatican City is the Pope. He's the head of the corporation. And this Vatican City, city-state, is the second most evilest city-state in the entire world because it is the center for the New World religion that is coming. As you can see in this picture, this diagram, it encompasses all of this area. It's considered the seat of Peter. But Peter, one of the apostles of the Lord Jesus Christ, has nothing to do with this because Catholicism has nothing to do with Christianity. It is the continuation of Imperial Rome and the Roman Empire's authority. Practically all the titles have been inherited by the Pope. Here's how the city of Vatican came into existence by the hands of Mussolini. Mussolini neutralized the Catholic Church with the agreement of 1929. Mussolini granted independent status to the Vatican in exchange for promises of non-interference from the Church in all political, social, economic, and military sphere. This worked to the advantage of the Catholic Church because all they wanted to be was a papal state, an independent state, not governed by the constitution or the monarchy of Italy of that time period. So they got exactly what they wanted, and Mussolini ended up nothing. He just ended up being hung at the end of World War II by his toes, along with his mistress. The Vatican economy. The Vatican economy is non-commercial, so they say, is based on financial contribution from Catholic dioceses from all over the world called Peter's Pence, and local revenues from tourism. Oh, how quaint. They're just a tourist attraction. You know what? If you read the history of Vatican, they have declared so many wars all over the place, and they have gotten their money by acts of wars and dispensation, where the Pope would give dispensation to anybody who would indulge in a crusade against the enemy of Catholicism, which has nothing to do with Christianity. Read the Bible. Catholicism contradicts Christianity at every turn. They have broken every commandment of God. They are the whore of Babylon, the second beast of the apocalypse that was prophesied. If you read Revelation, you will see that the Vatican, which is a political entity, perfectly fits the whore of Babylon, the second beast of the apocalypse that will help the Antichrist come to power. Look, the vow of poverty. You're doing it wrong. The Catholic Church has been empowered by the poverty of those who naively believe in Catholicism. Give money to them so that they can live in luxury while the world lives in poverty. This is not the teaching of the Lord Jesus Christ. Look at this vow of poverty. Do they have bling? Do they have swag? They have everything while the world lives in poverty. This is not Christianity. This is not what the Lord Jesus preached. Incredible that all of this is hiding in plain sight, and people are not observant that this church is evil, satanic, and is going to be the seat of the new world religion. The Lord Jesus said, go sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Mark 10-21. Does the Catholic Church honor the word of Christ? No, they do not. In Latin they sing and chant, Jesus, son of Lucifer. That's what Catholicism is singing in Latin during their masses. The Catholic Mass is a black mass that honors Satan, not the Lord Jesus. The Pope's church is the largest, richest corporation in the world. Of course it is. It's there for everyone to see. They have a whole collection of art and books and rare artifacts that they could sell and enrich the poor people, the hungry people, the desolate people. The Lord Jesus said, give water to the thirsty, food to the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless. What does the Catholic Church do? They don't do that. They're not into philanthropy. Oh, they play act in front of the cameras. They, in order to have good public relation, they're always going around blessing people and play acting. They're very good at this. They should win an Academy Award, which of course they would probably pay for it. No, the Catholic Church is not Christ's seat on earth. Here you see all of these pagan images that they wear. Do you know that the Catholic Church is told in the Christian Bible not to wear scarlet, red, or purple, that these are colors that God does not want any of his priests to wear, but they wear them in plain sight because they're constant defiance of the will of God. If you look at this, they worship the sun god. Everything about this is the inheritance and the continuation of Roman pagan religion. They got their authority from Constantine, a pagan emperor who lied and said that he turned to Christianity because he saw a cross in the sky. All baloney. The Vatican police, they have their own Swiss Guard from Switzerland in order to maintain their own police force. This corps is responsible for security and public order and border control and traffic control, etc., and also criminal investigation within their territory. The Vatican Archives has 50 miles of ancient document hidden from the public. No browsing is allowed. Theories around what contains inside include secret documents about Jesus Christ, alien beings, church involvement in wars and banks, and even child pornography. No one really knows what's in those archives. Yeah, but of course they have them online, but you only get to see what they allow you to see online. So they're hiding something. They've always been hiding. For your information, Catholicism has for centuries, when priests have sex with nuns, they infanticize, they murder children that nuns get pregnant with by having sexual relationship with priests, and they murder them. Look into that. You'll find out it's very true. Also, for hundreds of years, they've been castrating altar boys in order to keep them singing at a high-pitched voice. That is the Catholic Church for you, committing all sorts of atrocity against humanity. Also, the Catholic Church has murdered more Christians than the evil pagan Roman Empire, because if you do not adhere to Catholic dogma, you will get assassinated by the Jesuits, who are the assassins of the Catholic Church. This Catholic Church, by their actions, reveals how evil they are. Third, the military capital of the New World Order. Yes, it's Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not part of America. It is a completely independent city-state which is owned by the globalist bankers, used for worldwide military power, and funded by the American citizen. This city-state was created in 1871 when they incorporated, and they sold out. And Washington, D.C. has been exploiting the rest of the United States ever since. America is not an independent country. America is an oligarchy, not a democracy or a republic. A university studies finds, published in Washington Times. This is unfortunately very true. We are born into this country, and we're born into servitude under the control of Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the military empire of the three most evilest city-states on this earth. Study this, learn it, know your enemy. There is a new world order, there is an Illuminati. The Freemason created the Illuminati. The Illuminati today is a term that encompasses every secret society on this earth, hiding in plain sight all over the world. They're part of the Illuminati. Also, big corporations are also part of the Illuminati and the New World Order. They want to be on the winning side. They know that through the United Nations, which is going to be the seat of capital of the New World Order, whose side they want to be on. It's all about money. Follow the money. The flag of Washington, District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the empire: City of London, the Vatican in Rome, Washington, D.C. That is the flag of Washington, D.C. Not the flag of the United States of America, but the flag of slavery and evil and Luciferian government on this planet. I refer you to the United States Code. Note the capitalization indicating the corporation, not the republic. Title 28, 3002, 15A, BC. It is stated unequivocally that the United States is a corporation. When you look this up, and you have the access to the internet, you will find that my country, the United States of America, is nothing but a corporation owned by internationalist banker. Isn't it a coincidence that the pyramid is a symbol of ancient Egyptian mystery religions, and that there are 3 obelisks, one in Vatican City, one in the City of London, and another in Washington, D.C. Even the grid, the way Washington, D.C. was created by the Freemason, illustrates their love for pentagram, which is a symbol of Satanists. The entire city is grid that way. Here, let's ask ourselves a question. Who is the warmonger? The United States of America has been involved on the right in all of these wars to one degree or another. War is big business. Business generates money by selling arms, weapons of mass destruction. President Eisenhower warned the American people, but we didn't listen. Beware of the military-industrial complex. Big business, making big money by being in bed with big government. This is how money is made. Look at these honors that are given to our soldier. Do you know that these stars, in the way they're shown, is pure Satanism? So our American soldiers are given these medals because they're serving not the people of the United States, not the Bill of Rights or Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, but Satan himself. Those are satanic symbols, those medals. Let's be honest. The United States has existed for over 235 years, but out of those 235 years, we've been at war for 209 years of those. Who is getting us into the war? Well, the war profiteers, the people who are the political economic rulers of the United States and of the world. War is big business. And who pays the price for all the wars that the poor, the working class, and the middle class? This is the reality of the world that we live in. Awaken. Understand true history. What we are taught in school is a lie. We are living in a very evil world where the rich and powerful will kill us and have been killing us for generations because they need to make money, because that's what they worship, the false idol of gold. As soon as we recognize this, then we understand how to better protect ourselves and each other. All wars are organized by the Illuminati bankers to collect or incur debt, plunder or profit, and to advance their program for world government tyranny. They appeal to our patriotism to sucker us in. We are told we are fighting to preserve freedom when the opposite is actually true. If honoring veterans means perpetuating a cycle of endless war, we must stop. Better to be honor the dead by abolishing war. We can do this by nationalizing private central banks and making the bankers answer for their crimes. We can do it, but we have to unify like never before. We cannot allow them to divide and conquer the people of the United States and the people of the world. U.S. regime has killed 20 to 30 million people since the end of World War II. The U.S. is a war profiteering machine. The military-industrial complex makes money out of this. Let us finally admit that war is big business. We need to stop this cycle of endless murdering, of sticking our nose into other people's business around the world. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous, says George Orwell of the book 1984. He was right. Please read the book by George Orwell, 1984. It will teach you what world we're living in. We're now looking at a picture of my country as the center of military power, of the New World Order, of the Illuminati. My country, like your country, is a slave country under the dominion of the aristocrats, the ruling oligarchy of the political economic elite structure of every country. For all human history, those in power want to perpetuate their political power and their economic power. More power and wealth to the rich and nothing to the poor. That is why human history has been one of incredible mystery and misery for everybody. The system works because we do not know who is the real enemy. They divide us by playing racial politics and also class division when they're just getting richer and richer at our expense. Thank you for listening and watching. This is Tricky Mickey. Please support the channel by subscribing. Spread the word. Tricky Mickey is here. Thank you. Share and like. And until next time, take care. Bye.
Did the world wars, revolutions, and big events of human history evolve naturally, or were they calculated and pre-planned? If they were pre-planned, who planned them, and what are they planning for the future of humanity? The answer to this puzzling question can be found within the boundaries of 3 of the world's most powerful cities. Those 3 cities belong to no nation and pay no taxes. They are Washington's District of Columbia, which is not part of the city of Washington or of the United States, the inner city of London, which is not part of London or England, and Vatican City, which is not part of Rome or Italy. These cities, called city-states, have their own independent flag, their own separate laws, and their own separate identity.
Vatican City is in fact a state, the smallest principality in the world. It lies on the banks of the Tiber, completely surrounded by the city of Rome. Its status as a separate state emerged from the Lateran agreements of February 1929. It has its own newspaper, postal service, radio and television station, its own flag, and a population of about 1,000.
The Vatican also has its own army of Swiss guards, and it even has its own prison. The Vatican rules over approximately 2 billion of the world's 6.1 billion people. The colossal wealth of the Vatican includes enormous investments with the Rothschilds in Britain, France, and the USA, and with giant oil and weapons corporations like Shell and General Electric. The Vatican solid gold bullion worth billions is stored with the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England and the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. The Catholic Church is the biggest financial power, wealth accumulator, and property owner in existence, possessing more material wealth than any bank, corporation, giant trust, or government anywhere on the globe. The Pope, who is the visible ruler of this colossal global wealth, is one of the richest men on earth. While 2/3 of the world earns less than $2 a day, and 1/5 of the world is underfed or starving to death, the Vatican hoards the world's wealth, profits from it on the stock market, and at the same time preaches about giving. How did the Pope and Vatican accumulate all that wealth over the millennium? One method was to put a price tag on sin. Many bishops and popes actively marketed guilt, sin, and fear for profit by selling indulgences. Worshippers were encouraged to prepay for sins they hadn't yet committed and get pardoned ahead of time. Those who didn't pay up risked eternal damnation in Satan's oven. Pope Leo X rebuilt St. Peter's Basilica, selling tickets out of hell and tickets to heaven. During the Dark Ages, the Catholic Church not only hoarded the wealth they collected from the poor, but hoarded knowledge. They kept the masses ignorant and in the dark by denying them a basic education. During World War II, the Vatican was criticized for supporting Hitler and his Nazi regime. To this day, the Vatican is still under investigation for plundering Nazi gold from the Swiss bank accounts of Jewish Holocaust victims. Over the past 5 decades, more than 1,500 priests and bishops have been identified in the sexual assault of tens of thousands of boys and girls in their trusting congregations and orphanages. Why is this filthy rich institution preaching spiritual values of poverty and chastity while cardinals, bishops, and priests cover up their crimes of sexual abuse? Why has the Church fought and resisted the compensation claims of their sexually, emotionally, and spiritually traumatized victims? Like Vatican City, London's inner city is also a privately owned corporation or city-state, located right smack in the heart of Greater London. It became a sovereign state in 1694 when King William III of Orange privatized and turned the Bank of England over to the bankers. By 1812, Nathan Rothschild crashed the English stock market and scammed control of the Bank of England. Today, the city-state of London is the world's financial power center and the wealthiest square mile on the face of the earth. It houses the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England, Lloyd's of London, the London Stock Exchange, all British banks, the branch offices of 385 foreign banks, and 70 U.S. banks. It has its own courts, its own laws, its own flag, and its own police force. It's not part of Greater London or England or the British Commonwealth and pays no taxes. The city-state of London houses Fleet Street's newspaper and publishing monopolies. It is also the headquarters for worldwide English Freemasonry and headquarters for the worldwide money cartel known as the Crown. Contrary to popular belief, the Crown is not the royal family or the British monarch. The Crown is the private corporate city-state of London. It has a council of 12 members who rule the corporation under a mayor called the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor and his 12-member council serve as proxies or representatives who sit in for 13 of the world's wealthiest, most powerful banking families. This ring of 13 ruling families includes the Rothschild family, the Warburg family, the Oppenheimer family, and the Schiff family. These families and their descendants run the Crown Corporation of London. The Crown Corporation holds the title to worldwide Crown land in Crown colonies like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The British Parliament and the British Prime Minister serve as a public front for the hidden power of these ruling Crown families. Like the city-state of London and the Vatican, a third city-state was officially created in 1982. That city-state is called the District of Columbia and is located on 10 square miles of land in the heart of Washington. The District of Columbia flies its own flag and has its own independent constitution. Although geographically separate, the city-states of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called Empire of the City. The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the first Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed, or Federal Reserve, is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words, "In God We Trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. American presidents are handpicked and financed by these special interest power groups. Like George W. Bush, John Forbes Kerry, whose initials are JFK, is a member of Yale University's Skull and Bones Brotherhood. The Forbes part of John Kerry's name identifies his descendancy from Captain Robert Bennett Forbes, who was a drug runner for the Rothschilds' opium drug trade with China in the 1800s. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the President is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the President is President of the Corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen, and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another Crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C. city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the Freemason Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. The secretive Brotherhood of Freemasons laid the Washington obelisk's cornerstone in 1848 and contributed 22 Masonic memorial stones. 250 Masonic lodges financed the Washington Monument obelisk, including the Knights Templar Masonic Order. At the heart of London city-state is a 187-ton, 69-foot-tall Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle. It was transported from Egypt and erected on the banks of the River Thames. In Vatican City, another Egyptian obelisk towers high above St. Peter's Square.
Babylon is falling, and Yahushua is calling us to come out from her ways. This mystery religion is stealing Yahuwah's children. That's why he's calling, come out today. So don't drink from the wine of fornication. The harlot is pouring for you. For every tongue and every nation has drunken from the wine of fruit. Don't look unto the prizes, they're deadly disguises, mere counterfeits of Yahuwah's perfect plan. The church gives no rebuttal, 'cause she is so subtle, she can lure the strongest man. So don't drink from the wine of fornication. The harlot is pouring for you. For every tongue and every nation has drunken from the wine of her fruit. How do we find the harlot who's dressed in robes of scarlet with pearls and gold, who sits on 7 hills? Just look all through your Bible, and there you'll see her idols. Yah's word reveals the cup of wrath she feels. So don't drink from the wine of fornication. The harlot is pouring for you. For every tongue and every nation drunken from the wine of her fruit. I saw a messenger coming down, crying with a loud voice, saying, Babel the Great is fallen and has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, and a haunt for every unclean and hateful bird, because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of her righteous living. Thus said Yahuwah, Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from Yahuwah. For he shall be like a shrub in the desert, and not see when good comes. Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues, because her sins have piled up to reach the heaven, and Elohim has remembered her unrighteousness. Render to her as she indeed did render, and repay her double according to her works in the cup which she has mixed for her double. Babylon has fallen, and Yahushua